Hi everyone, for today's video, I would like to talk about the Brush Festival, mainly because I am planning to release this video on the day of the festival itself. And this year it falls on September 22nd, which is the 86th year that the Fude Matsuri is being celebrated in Kumano, Hiroshima, Japan. Now, if you've been following me on social media for at least 2 years, you guys would have seen that at this time of the year, I would have been in Japan already, preparing myself to celebrate brushes at the festival, but because of the pandemic this year, that's quite impossible. But that's actually the main reason why all of the videos that I've been releasing for the month of September is all about makeup brushes, because this is one way of celebrating it my own way. For today's video, I would like to talk about a number of things, but mainly I would like to talk about one, the brushes that I purchased at the Brush Festival, which are becoming my fast favorites. And I'm also going to show you guys how I use it so you guys can see it in action. And the other thing that I would like to talk about is my experience going to the Brush Festival, and also the things that I did in order to prepare myself to get there. Now, I've been there twice, back in 2018 and 2019, and I think that just by me talking about it can maybe prove helpful to someone who's planning to go to the Brush Festival in the near future. Although I don't know how traveling is going to be next year after this pandemic is all over, or if it does get over, but I don't think that COVID-19 is going to be eradicated anytime soon, but at least by next year, I hope it gets to be managed fairly easily so that we can all travel and go to places where we want to be and to experience things, because, life is short. So I have just rewatched my Fude Matsuri videos from 2018 and 2019, and I've just realized there that I didn't really talk much about the preparations that I did in order for me to get there. So that's why I've decided that I'm gonna do that this year. Now, if you're only interested in watching the brushes that I bought there and how I use them, I'm gonna put a timestamp below so that you guys can skip over to that part. So these are my tips to get yourself to the Brush Festival. You don't have to follow my exact footsteps, but maybe if you've been curious about it and if you've been wondering if it's doable, I hope that this part of my video will prove helpful. First things first, you have to know the exact date of autumn equinox of the year that you are going to the Brush Festival. Now, this is important because Fude Matsuri falls on autumn equinox, and autumn equinox falls between September 22nd or September 23rd. Now, the reason why I'm telling you guys that it's important to know the exact date is because last year I wrongly assumed that autumn equinox was on September 22nd, and I realized, I think a week before I was going to fly to Japan, that it was on September 23rd, and that actually derailed my travel plans, and it made me panic because September 23 was actually the date of my return here to the Philippines. So I was racking my brain on how I could go about it, and I didn't want to rebook my flights anymore because I would have to actually pay more for the rebooking of my ticket. So I was like, oh, geez, am I gonna cut my Fude Matsuri experience short? Like, I mean, do I have to rush from Hiroshima all the way to Osaka, then all the way to the airport? It was getting a bit hectic for me. Now, luckily for me, a day after I realized my mistake, my airline actually messaged me and said that they retimed my flight. And because of that, they offered that I could rebook my flight for either an earlier date or a later date without paying for an extra fee. So I got really lucky last year. So because of that, I was able to experience Fude Matsuri the entire day without the need to rush back to the airport. Now, the other thing that you guys have to do is that you have to get a rail pass. Now, you have to do this before you fly to Japan. At least do this 2 to 3 weeks before your flight. Japan is a country that has an extensive railway system, and it's actually easier to travel around through rail than by plane. Now, if you are planning your trip to Japan around the Brush Festival, having a rail pass is a good idea. Now, I know for some of you, especially if you're coming from Europe or from the United States, that sometimes a trip to Japan might be a once in a lifetime experience and you want to squeeze in a lot of experiences as possible. And this trip, getting a rail pass can enable you to do that. Now, one of the most well-known railway companies in Japan is called the Japan Railway Company, and it's actually a group of six independent railway companies under the same name, so the Japan Railway Company. Yeah, so they actually offer different rail passes depending on the area where you will be staying at. But if you plan to travel, cross country, like maybe after the festival or before the festival, you want to go or come back from Tokyo, you have to get a national rail pass for that. I'm gonna put a link down below so that you guys can check it out for yourself. But if you are like me, who's only planning to be in a specific area in Japan for a specific number of time, then get yourself an area pass. Now, the rail pass that I purchased is from the JR West Company. They are the JR company that operates on the western portion of Honshu. Now, JR West offers different types and different kinds of area passes depending on the area where you want to be, how many days are going to be in the area, and how much that you're willing to spend actually. Now, I recommend that you get either of the two types of rail passes from the JR West Company if you're only going to be in the area for that specific time. You either get a Kansai Hiroshima Pass or a Sanyo San-in Pass. The Kansai Hiroshima Pass, I bought that in 2018 and it's valid for 5 days and it enables me to travel from Osaka to Kyoto, Nara, and all the way to Hiroshima and back. Now, last year, I was actually in Japan for a much more longer period of time. So I bought myself a Sanyo San-in Pass, which is actually good for 7 days. Now, what you see here is not the ticket itself, or it's not the pass, but it's just where they place the pass. So this is actually how the pass looks like. And as you can see here, it's still in good condition because that's part of the conditions on how you should keep your rail pass. You should make sure that it doesn't get torn, it doesn't get wet, or it doesn't get vandalized or get lost because they will not reissue that once that happens. As I've said earlier, this is only available for purchase outside Japan and they're only available to tourists. So make sure to do that before you arrive in Japan. Now, the thing with this is after purchasing this from their online store, you get a voucher and you actually print that voucher and you bring it with you and you present that voucher, including the credit card that you use for paying for the rail pass at the JR West office. And they give this to you and you're good to go. Now, one of the main questions that I guess asked all the time about rail passes is that, is it really a good idea to have one? And in my opinion, yes, because this makes everything accessible in Japan. Like, for example, having a rail pass like this will enable you to take the airport trains from Kansai International Airport all the way to Osaka and even as far as Kyoto. And then this will also enable you to ride conventionals or local trains from Osaka to Kyoto, and this will also enable you to ride the bullet trains from Shin Osaka all the way to Hiroshima and back. And it's unlimited, so you can ride as many times as you want within the 7 days of validity that you have for the ticket. In terms of price, last year I bought this for 19,800 yen, so that's around almost 10,000 pesos or a little bit over $200. And I know it sounds expensive, but if we're going to do the math, for example, a bullet train from Shin Osaka all the way to Hiroshima will cost you at least $100, I think, or around, how much is it? 10,630 yen. So that's almost half of the total price of this rail pass. And if you decide to go back to Osaka or to go anywhere else in the Kansai region or the Hiroshima region, after the festival, you would have to pay for another one-way ticket price on the bullet train just to get there. So it will actually add up. And not to mention that you'll have to pay for fees for the trains to and from the airport, and then also some local trains, things like that. And the good thing about this, by the way, is that it is valid to use on certain bus routes and on certain ferries that is run by the JR West company or by the JR group in totality. So it's great for tourism. Now, the other thing that I suggest that you guys get when you arrive in Japan is a smart card. So this is called an ikoka. So this is a form of prepaid card that can be used to pay for buses, can be used at convenience stores and certain shopping establishments where this is accepted. Now, this is an ikoka, so this is one of 10 well-known smart cards known in Japan. Now, the main reason why I'm telling you guys to get this is because you will be taking public transport when you are there. And I actually use this to pay for bus fares. Now, I am dyslexic, and based on my experience in 2018 when I first went there, you have to pay the exact fare in coins on the bus. And being that I have a slight form of dyslexia, it's really difficult for me to group things together, especially when I'm in a rush, because I end up creating a mistake. Now, this is actually what happened when I tried to put the coins on the till beside the bus driver, and it actually caused an error because I put in the wrong coins. And the thing is, you can't really pay in bills, and they don't give out change, so it was quite a bit of an embarrassment for me. So I realized that having one like this actually helps me a lot. Like, you know, I don't have to worry about coins. I don't have to worry about planning for counting for the exact fare. All I have to do is I just tap this at the reader when I enter the bus, and I tap it before I exit. Now, the also great thing about this is that you can use this to pay for food in convenience stores. And there was one incident last year when, after the Brush Festival, I was walking around Hiroshima with my friend, and I actually left my wallet at home, and I only realized that I didn't have my wallet with me was when I was buying food. Now, the good thing, the convenience store where I was buying food accepts this as a form of payment. So I was actually able to pay for my dinner with this. So the great thing about this is that because this is actually sold by the JR West company, it actually offers you a heavily discounted price on the airport express train from Kansai International Airport to either Osaka or Kyoto. Now, technically, I was in Japan last year for 8 days. Now, the JR Pass that I showed you earlier was only valid for 7 days. Now, you're telling me, why are you buying a smart card and an airport train ticket if you have the JR Pass? Well, the main reason why I didn't activate my JR Pass on the day of my arrival is because I actually arrived around, was it 9 in the evening or 8 in the evening? I can't remember. And the thing is, if you activate it at that day, it doesn't matter if you activate it at 8 in the morning or 8 in the evening, but by 12 midnight, it's gonna refresh. And that short amount of time will already count as 1 day. So it's actually such a waste to use it for such a short duration of time. So buying a discounted airport ticket with this actually helped me save money because airport express train tickets are quite pricey also in Japan. So this is actually a limited edition Ikoka card from the JR West company, and they have the Hello Kitty design here. The regular design is actually like a blue platypus, and this one is only available for purchase at Kansai International Airport. So it's also a great remembrance of your trip to Japan. And the great thing about this is that if you plan to go back to Japan on a regular basis, this card will be valid for 10 years after the date of last use. So you don't have to worry about this getting expired. Now, you have to plan your trip properly. Like, before you even get to Japan, you already have to have a list of the things that you want to do and the places that you want to go, or the brush companies that you want to visit, because this just gives you a little room for error when you get to the country, because a lot of things can happen when you travel. But at least when you've already started planning and plotting things down, your mind is already psychologically ready to take the right steps to the direction that you are going. When you are planning this trip, you also have to know if the brush festival falls on a weekday or a weekend, because if the brush festival falls on a weekend, this limits your experiences that you can squeeze into the day. But if the brush festival falls on a weekday, you can add more activities to the day that you go there, especially if you're only planning to spend your time in Hiroshima for the brush festival. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because most brush companies are open from Mondays to Fridays only. So if you're expecting that, oh, if I arrive there on a Friday evening and I would plan to do like a brush making experience in Koyudo the morning before you go to the brush festival, that wouldn't be possible because they will be closed. But if it falls on a weekday, you can actually do this. It's a great idea to start the day by doing a brush making experience in that brush company. Now, the reason why I said that you can actually squeeze in brush making activity in Koyudo before heading to the brush festival is because Koyudo is actually only a few minutes walk from the bus stop where you will take the bus to the brush festival. It really does help to know the exact date of the festival because one thing you guys have to know is that the day after autumn equinox, it is considered a national holiday in Japan. So if the brush festivals falls on a weekday, like example on a Wednesday, so on Thursday everything is going to be closed. And if you plan to do something else the day after the brush festival, that includes buying brushes from head offices of different brush companies in Kumano, or maybe doing the brush making experience from Kyoto the day after, that would be a bad idea. So if you want to do anything like that, you have to do it way before the brush festival. Not unless if you're spending so much time in Hiroshima, then you can do it 2 days after the festival. But I know that for some of us who go there, our time there is very limited and we would want to create a much more well-organized trip so that we don't waste our time, we don't waste our money, and we don't waste our effort. These are the things that you need to take into consideration if you want to do more than just the brush festival when you go to Kumano. Now, next year, autumn equinox is going to be on September 23rd. It's going to be a Thursday. If I was going to create a sample itinerary when I will be in Hiroshima for the brush festival, these are the things that I will do. So I would probably arrive in Hiroshima by September 21st. And then on September 22nd, I would have had a schedule at Kyoto to create my own brush experience in the morning at say around 10. And then after that, I'm going to try to visit other brush companies in Kumano and purchase the brushes that I would want to try or, I've been dying to buy. And then I'm going to spend the whole day doing that. And probably by mid-afternoon, I'm going to find my way to Sakakayama Shrine because there's actually celebrations the night before the brush festival. So I really want to do that. I actually wanted to do that this year because last year there was a huge storm and this actually canceled that said activity. Now, after that, on September 23rd, the brush festival itself, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to head to the brush museum in the morning, like around 10 or 11. And then after lunch, I'm gonna go around the brush festival and partake in the festivities, which I think is a good plan because you can't really squeeze everything in one day. It's just too much. And if you do that, you won't hardly remember everything. And the only thing that you'll always say to people, you were very exhausted because you're rushing from one place to another. So try to space everything out so that you have quality time. The other thing that you guys have to prepare for if you decide to go to Japan during the brush festival is that this is actually the typhoon season in Asia. Even in the Philippines, it gets very rainy and very stormy. And you have to prepare yourself that there might be cancellations and there might be travel disruptions caused by the weather. Now, the main reason why I'm saying that is because back in 2018, if you didn't watch my 2018 brush haul video, there was actually a huge storm that hit the Kansai region, I think 3 weeks before, or is it 4 weeks? Like 3 weeks before the brush festival. Now, this actually led to the rail bridge between Kansai International Airport to Osaka to be destroyed because a boat hit it and it actually derailed the rails. So this almost canceled my plans that year, but eventually on the day that I was flying out of the Philippines, the railway system actually started working again. So I got very, very lucky with that. And last year, the day before the Brush Festival, there was actually a huge storm that went through the region again. Because of this, the eve celebrations of the Brush Festival were actually canceled. I do remember they were stated in the website that in case it's gonna be beautiful weather the following day, they were going to push through with the festival. But lucky for me, the storm passed and I was actually able to participate in the brush festival. Now, I wasn't really worried about the storm when I was there, although it was very, very strong and it rained so hard and the winds were very, very strong. I also come from the Philippines and I have weathered a lot of storms, but I have to say it was actually the first time in my life that I have experienced a windstorm. It was very, very the winds were very, very strong and there was no more rain around that time. It was already late in the evening. But the winds were very strong that I could hear the window panes rattling. That's the first time in my life that I ever experienced something like that. And I could feel the apartment complex of my friend, because I stayed with a good friend who lives in Hiroshima, Poly. I could actually feel the apartment complex move because it was so windy. Like if you watch My Neighbor Totoro, like there was that part where he just flew past May and it blew so much wind and it like blew like wood chunks into the air. That's how I would describe it. It was very, very strong and I could hear it like passing to the streets. I could hear it passing to the windowsills. It was crazy. But yeah, lucky for me, nothing happened. So that's something you have to prepare for, that there might be cancellations due to bad weather. Now, you have to know that Hiroshima is at least 300 kilometers from Osaka, so it's that far. And if you are planning to only make this as a day trip from Osaka or maybe from Kyoto, I think that would be possible, but it sounds very hectic to me. And I don't suggest that you do this as a day trip coming from Tokyo, because on the bullet train, that would take around maybe 4 hours or a little over 3 hours. I'm not too sure, but it just sounds too hectic for me. Because the thing is, once you get to Hiroshima, you have to transfer to a local train, and once you go down at Yano Station, you have to take a bus to the festivities and you have to retrace your steps just in case you need to get back and catch on the latest bullet train to the city where you are actually staying. It's actually much better to situate yourself in Hiroshima at least the night before or 2 days before the festivities, because this just gives you a time to relax and to get to know the city and to get to know the train station, because a lot can happen in train stations. Train stations in Japan are notorious to be very, very difficult, and there have been many times that I have gotten lost, but fortunately for me, I haven't missed a train yet. But this doesn't mean that I haven't rushed from one part of the station to another. Try to situate yourself in Hiroshima, and don't think that Hiroshima is boring. Although Hiroshima is much more quieter and less stressful than the bigger cities like Osaka, Kyoto, or Tokyo, it's very beautiful there. And there are many things that you can see, and there are also many things that you can experience. Like, for example, you can go to Miyajima Island, and when you purchase a rail pass like this, you can actually take the ferry from Hiroshima to Miyajima Island for free. And the great thing about Hiroshima also is the food. I love the okonomiyaki there. So great. Every time I get in, I always meet up with Polly and we always have okonomiyaki on the day of my arrival because it's what Hiroshima is known for. Hiroshima, by the way, has their own airport. It's called Hiroshima City Airport, I think. But they only serve mostly domestic flights and a handful of international flights. And if you do decide that you want to fly into Hiroshima, you would have to connect via, I think, Bangkok, Hong Kong, South Korea, some parts of China, and from Taipei in Taiwan. So there's always that option. Now, on the day of the Brush Festival, you actually have to travel from Hiroshima City all the way to Akigun and make your way to Sakakiyama Shrine. Now, there are a few options that you can take to get there. It's either you take a bus from Hiroshima City, or you can take a cab or a car. That's the most expensive option. And what I usually do is I actually take a train and a bus to get there. Now, the reason why I do this is because I have a JR West Rail Pass, and this will also enable me to take the train to get me halfway to the festivities. So what I do is that I make my way to Hiroshima Station, and when I get there, I take the Kure Line train to Hiro, and I ride it all the way to Yano Station. Now, Yano Station, I think, is just 2 stops from Hiroshima Station, and it takes around 15-20 minutes if I remember correctly. And when I arrive in Yano Station, I make my way to Yano Ekime bus stop. It is just actually at the very base of the stairs when you exit, and it is on the first depot. So that's where the bus usually stops. Now, I'm not sure if this will change next year or if it has changed this year. If push comes to shove, you can always ask people around there. Now, just to be sure, you have to take a Hiroden bound bus, because this bus will actually pass through Kumano Egyosho, and this is where you get down. And when you get there, there's actually a free bus or coaster service that will take you to different drop-off and pick-up points around the festivities. So this might sound overwhelming to you at the moment, but on my first trip there, I felt kind of lost. I have to say Google Maps is your friend, and if you just keyed in everything before you trip, and then if you just put Google Maps on as your guide, you won't get lost. Now, when you get to Kumano Egyosho bus station, I do have to say that it is actually an easy walk to Sakakiyama Shrine from there. You can do it. You have the option. I have done it. I like doing it. I like walking. And it's a 30-minute walk through paved country roads with blooming cosmos and rice paddies. It's quite an interesting walk, actually. So since it's known for brushes, every so often as you walk along, you would see, small brush companies that sells calligraphy brushes, painting brushes, and then you can see some workshops as well. And then even like the manhole covers there, it has a brush design on it. So it's very, very interesting. Now, I do suggest that you start your day at the brush museum called Fude no Satokobo, because you don't have to do this early, but if you leave Hiroshima at around 10 in the morning, you will be there by 11, and it takes an hour to go through the museum and to see what they offer and to see the brushes that is being made in Kumano, and also to do a little bit of shopping because they actually have an area there where you can buy brushes. By the time that you're finished, it will be around lunch already. So what I suggest that you do is that you exit through the back of the museum and you follow the paved road downwards until you see this dirt clearing at the bottom of it's not a cliff, but at the very bottom. And this is actually the food court. Now, this is a communal food court wherein you can buy food and you can share tables with town folk and other tourists who are there for the day. Now, for the food is amazing. I saw okonomiyaki, I had ramen, I had a lot of mochi, I had fresh strawberry shake. There were a lot of sweets. You will not go hungry in this festival. You will be stuffed until the very end of the day. Now, the thing also there is actually a stage where you will be entertained while you have lunch. So this is actually a very good thing to experience. Just do take note that it gets very, very hot, especially if the weather is very nice. So bring a parasol if you need to. Now, after lunch, do not retrace your steps and follow the road to the very end, because this will actually lead you to the side entrance of Sakakiyama Shrine. So that's, well, although you're still there, but it's actually less dramatic because the main entrance is on the other side. So what I suggest that you do is that after lunch, you make through way to the middle of the school grounds and you exit through the main road, and then you turn left and you head straight, and then you will actually know that you are already at Sakakiyama Shrine, because you will see the Torre or the gate wherein a lot of big brushes are dangling from. So that's the main entrance of Sakakiyama Shrine. Thinking about it now, the image in my head conjures wonderful feelings in me. I have enjoyed my 2 visits there, and it's a very, very eye-opening and very rewarding experience, because not a lot of people know about this, and it's a very small communal festival. Even I talked to an artisan in Kyoto. He's like an artist, a manga artist, and when he asked me what was I doing in Japan at this time of the year, I told him I'm actually headed to Fude Matsuri, and he's very, very surprised for a Japanese man that he didn't know that there was such a thing. So that kind of made me special, I knew something that a local didn't know about. But yeah, so I do suggest that if you are a brush nerd, or if you're a makeup nerd, you actually try and visit once in your life, because this puts your brushes in a different light and you actually appreciate more. Because for me, I didn't know when I started in my career that brushes were handmade. I didn't know in detail about how special a brush actually is. So it's like very mind opening. So this is something that I totally recommend that you do at least once in your life. It will be worth your time, it will be worth your money, and it will be worth your effort. Not everybody can do this, and it is a highly cultural experience. And to be exposed to something like this will enrich your life to the very end of your days. Okay, now I'm going to be talking about the brushes that I purchased at the festival or during the festival. I'm not going to talk about all of the brushes that I actually purchased, but these are just some of what I constantly go back to. And I'm gonna show you guys also how I use it. Okay, so the first brush that we see here, this is from Meow. I actually like this brush for foundations. Now, this is made of goat. Now, it's very dense and it's also very compact. That's the main reason why I like using this for a foundation application. What I would usually do is I would just load the brush with foundation and I just, gently brush it all over my face. And I actually use this brush if I want to create a very opaque coverage because of the density of it. It actually picks up more of the foundation and it also helps me to pack on the color on the skin. I also use this at times for cream blushes and gel blushes, and I'm actually pissed at myself that I only bought one because I usually like to purchase multiples. When I went there in 2019, because I actually went to Hiroshima a few days early, I actually went around Kumano and tried to visit a few number of brush companies, and Mia was one of them, but I couldn't find it. I think because their head office was being renovated or their factory was being renovated. Okay, now the other brush that I also love that I purchased at the brush festival is this Yachio brush from the brush company named number 8. Now I do have to say that before I continue that, I think it's in my brush belt downstairs, but anyway, the main thing that I would like to say that although different brush companies create Yachio brushes, the only way that you know that one Yachio brush belongs to a specific brush company is by the color of the ribbon that they attach at the very tip here. Hayakusuke, the first Yachio brush that I bought in Tokyo in 2009, had a white string. Hakuhodo is purple and number 8 is black. I actually use this for finishing powders, and I think I talked about that in my favorite brushes for the face and for blush. I can't remember anymore. If you would have seen my Guerlain Meteorites video, you can see this in action there. So, but for today, I would like to show you guys the other thing that I like to use this for, and it's actually for cream blush application. Now, the reason why I like to use this for cream blush is because it's very airy, and if I want to build color, like example, if I am working with someone and I'm not sure if the color needs to be bolder based on either her character or based on the clothes that she's wearing. So I actually use a Yachio brush like this to build the color, just so that I am sure that I get the right amount of product on the face. By now, if you've seen like my past videos about my makeup brushes, I actually purchased brushes that has multiple uses. And this is also one thing that I like about Yachio brushes, because I can use them for powders and I can use them for creams and liquids as well. Okay, so the next brush I'm going to talk about is this brush. Now, I think this is from Mizuho, but I'm not sure because I bought this in 2018. So as you can see here, the tip is actually square tip, and I can use this for lipstick or even for applying concealer. So again, because it's a square tip, I can apply it to my inner corner of the eye and also here the outer corner just for a lift. And now, if I want to mix it, I actually bought this very nice brush. It's very small. And I can't remember from which brush company it was again. I'm so pissed off because the thing is, there are so many brush companies lined up. They have kiosks around Sakakiyama Shrine, especially at the very bottom of the stairs. And they just sell their products there, and they're right beside each other. And of course, because I don't speak Japanese, nor could I actually read it, So I wouldn't really know from which company it belongs to, but sometimes if I just see a brush and then I like what I see, I just go straight ahead to that kiosk and I purchase what I want. So yeah, so for this brush, I love this because it's very dense again, as you can see here, and it's also quite stiff. I have always used this to blend out concealers. So I can actually apply concealer straight using this brush instead of using the square tip brush, and I could just blend this. One thing that I have observed though is that if I apply concealer using this brush, it actually delivers a much more opaque coverage and a much more thicker finish than this. So you have to be very careful with that as well, because if it's the kind of look that you're going for, you can use this brush, but if not, you can always use a different brush to deliver concealer first and then use this to blend it out. Now, one thing I also have to say is that I also love using this for putting on blush. So again, multiple use brushes. Although I have to say that it's not very fine, and I can feel that there's some sharp points at the very end of the brush tip, but it is not as bad as some of the synthetic fiber brushes that I have used before. Okay, now the other brush that I absolutely love is this Matsukondo. I think you've seen me use this before. This is what I use to apply camouflage. Now, camouflage has a much more thicker consistency than concealers, and I actually use camouflage for covering scars. So I love using this. This is actually for painting kimonos, and this really helps me to layer on camouflage on the skin. One thing I have to say, I did not buy this brush at the brush festival grounds, but I actually bought this at the brush museum. So this is made of horsehair and it's quite stiff, but it actually is still very soft. Okay, so the next brush I'm going to talk about are these two. I think these are from Mizuho again. And these are eyeshadow brushes. And this is made from squirrel. I think this is made from blue squirrel. I can't remember. And this is made from pine squirrel. I don't use this for eyeshadow, but I actually use this to set with powder. So again, I like setting powders on my face in portions, because there are some parts of my face that I want to keep dewy, and there are some parts that I want to keep matte. So this is really helpful in packing on powder on the face. So because the brush is very small, it can help me, set powder at around the nose, on the tip of the nose, on the bridge, the inner corner of the eye, the outer corner of the eye, on the cheeks. And then if I want to set a much more bigger area on my face, I use this brush. This is goat hair. So as you can see here, this is much more airy and much more softer. Now this is actually from the brush company Mizuho. I am so sure this is from Mizuho because I saw this again last year when I was there. And I use this if I want to lightly set portions of the face, just to remove some shine. And I also like to use this brush for finishing powders. So let's add some here. This is the Guerlain Meteorites. I love the smell of the Guerlain Meteorites. So because this is very airy and very less dense, this helps me pick up the right amount of product. And I also love the design. Like, I love the color of the ferrule. I thought at first it was rose gold, but it's like a very nice muted yellow gold. So I love this brush. I also love the size. I wish it was longer though, but I don't mind it. It fits right into my hand. And I can also use this to remove any of the excess powder. Now I go back to the other brush and I use this just to blend the powders. Now next, what I want to show you guys is another version of the brushes from Matsukondo. Now, I love using this for water-activated eyeshadows, and sometimes I like using them for cream eyeshadows. Now, these are actually used for stenciling kimonos, so this is actually great if you want to apply cream or liquid products on the eyelids. Just love that. You can actually just use this to blend. And again, this is horsehair. Even if it is very compact, it is not irritating to the eye. And I also don't have sensitive eyes, so I'm very lucky with that. And this brush is actually great to use if you just want to intensify by patting on the product on the eyelid. And you can also use this to apply powder eyeshadow on top of the cream. Now these brushes come in different sizes, so you can just actually use it at whatever way that you want. So what we're going to do now is we're going to apply some intensity to my socket line. And this is actually a much more smaller brush. This is like the sister of the brush that I used a little bit earlier to put on the cream eyeshadow. And also its setting powder, the one in gold. And this actually does well in blending. If you want to create like a cut crease, this is very great to use as well. Also great for blending. I enjoy using this brush immensely. So I have an angled brush here, and I'm going to use that just to line my upper lash line. You have to be careful though, because this brush actually picks up a ton of pigment, so be very light-handed. And I'm gonna get that baby sister of that brush, and I'm going to use this for softly enhancing eyebrows. Now I love using this for powder eyebrow products. It really does the job. And lastly, a spoolie, of course, because they do help groom our eyebrows. I think this is also from Mizuho. I can't remember. So that's it, guys. This is the complete look. And I used the brushes that I bought at the brush festival. So these are fastly becoming my favorite brushes to use. I have not disappointed. And as I've said in my previous Fude Matsuri and brush haul videos, you actually get these at a very heavily discounted prices, as much as 40% off, which is a very good deal that you can't back off from. Now, one other tip, by the way, is that when you go to the brush festival, you don't have to buy a brush for the sake of buying a brush. I mean, you don't have to go there just to shop, because going to the brush festival is actually about a much more cultural and a much more profound experience. But if you do have any intention of purchasing brushes, you just have to know the exact brush that you want and the exact brush that you need, so that you can have a guide and not spend an excessive amount of money. Because after all, brushes are expensive, and it's a total waste of your time and money if you purchase something and you just let it be in your home. So that's it from me today, guys. I hope that this video was helpful and insightful. And if you have any more questions about the brush festival or the brushes that I just used, please leave them down at the comments box below, and let's have a conversation about this. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you're having a good day wherever you are.